This portion of the news is brought to you by Ron Carter Cadillac.
Good afternoon, I'm Marcia De La Fe with today's top headlines. On NTV Houston today, we're continuing our coverage of the deadly flooding disaster in Houston and southeast Texas. President Trump is firing back after a report from the Washington Post regarding an urgent whistleblower complaint. A hectic scene in Washington, D.C. after multiple people were shot. U.S. scientists are teaming up with investigators to help researchers across the country try to make sense of the current vaping epidemic. And millions take part in global strikes demanding action on climate change. We'll have much more coming up on NTV Houston. We begin today with the latest on Tropical Depression Imelda. We did get a little bit of a break, but it's still not over as of this morning. Most of the rain has moved away from southeast Texas, but deep moisture continues to stream from the Gulf of Mexico. We could see more downpours later this afternoon, dumping as much as 1 to 5 inches of rain in some areas, which can make the flooding even worse. The ground is so saturated it can't handle any more rain. There are hundreds of cars still flooded or abandoned. To give you an idea of how powerful the storm was, Imelda is the 7th most rain ever in a tropical system in the United States. Harvey is number 1. We're still dealing with a lot of high water locations across the Houston area. Multiple barges struck the I-10 bridge over the San Jacinto River overnight, forcing the closure of the freeway in both directions as crews look to inspect it. Bush International Airport flight arrivals have resumed this morning after more than 900 flights were canceled. And across the region, around 200 students were forced to spend the night in schools after floodwaters made it impossible to get home. And all of this happening just 2 years after Hurricane Harvey. Some areas experienced worse flooding than they saw during Harvey. The worst hit area was in Winnie. Imelda brought up to 43 inches of rain between Winnie and Beaumont in the last 3 days, most of it falling in just 24 hours. And we're going to have more on Imelda and the current weather conditions coming up during our weather broadcast. President Trump is firing back after a report from the Washington Post regarding an urgent whistleblower complaint from an intelligence officer. Trump has dismissed the report as presidential harassment, tweeting, "Virtually any time I speak on the phone to a foreign leader, I understand that there may be many people listening. Is anyone dumb enough to believe that I would say something inappropriate on such a potentially heavily populated call?" The Washington Post citing officials say the president's interactions with the foreign leader, including a promise that the officer found so troubling that they filed a complaint with the inspector general. After the testimony, Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff voiced his concerns about not having access to the information.
We do know that the Department of Justice has been involved in the decision to withhold that information from Congress. We do not know because we cannot get an answer to the question about whether the White House is also involved in preventing this information from coming to Congress. We do not have the complaint. We do not know whether the press reports are accurate or inaccurate about the contents of that complaint.
The acting director of national intelligence, Joseph McGuire, has agreed to testify publicly next week. We don't know who the foreign leader was and what the president allegedly promised. Turning now to the violent eruption in Washington, D.C. 5 people were shot in Columbia Heights, just a few blocks away from a very busy area. 1 person was killed. Police say the shooting at an apartment complex courtyard was carried out with an AK-47 style rifle. Officers found 6 people with gunshot wounds at the scene. People say they heard what sounded like rapid gunfire. Police still don't have a motive, but investigators are looking into a possible drive-by shooting. The victims suffered gunshot wounds that range from non-critical to critical. They were taken to area hospitals where they remain today. Police are now looking for a light-colored Nissan sedan with 2 men inside armed with a rifle. This is a developing story, and we'll be providing you with any updates on our NTV Houston app. The investigation into hundreds of cases of life-threatening lung illnesses related to vaping is turning up new clues, helping researchers across the country try to make sense of the situation. Researcher Robert Tarrin is one of a group of researchers studying collections of lung cell samples, looking for answers about the outbreak.
In my lab, we study real-world vapors who vape normally. So we've been collecting people who've been vaping for 6 months to a couple of years and then taking their lungs as they are. So I think the people we've been studying are representative of people who've been hospitalized. And I think it's important to say that in all the vapors that we've studied, we're seeing changes in all their lungs.
Many of the people in the study had pockets of oil clogging up cells responsible for removing impurities in the lungs. The answer to where that oil comes from will help explain whether these cells play a key role in the vaping-related outbreak that has killed 8 people and has hospitalized 530 so far. It may also reveal whether some of these cases have been happening all along undetected. A group of researchers who have been studying the long-term effects of vaping say they have taken up the challenge. They have begun to re-examine lung cell samples they have collected in recent years for evidence of these oil-filled immune cells in people who vaped but didn't get sick. One possibility is that the deposits are residue from inhaling vaping oils, such as those containing THC, which is a main component of marijuana, or vitamin E acetate. Both are considered dangerous and possible contributors to the current illnesses. Some researchers suspect the oils are formed inside the lungs as part of the body's natural response to chemicals found in many commercial vaping devices. One theory is that vaping these chemicals may impair the immune system and make people who vape more vulnerable to respiratory issues.
One of the things we found, there was a wide variety. Some e-liquids are more toxic than others, and we found there was a correlation. The more flavors in an e-liquid, the more likely it was to be toxic. But there was also an incredible diversity of flavors. So in 150 e-liquids, we found about 200 different chemical constituents. And so really, the flavors in e-liquids really are all over the map.
A study by the Journal of Clinical Investigation earlier this month has fueled the later theory. It found that mice exposed to aerosols of propylene glycol and vegetable glycerin, commonly found in conventional nicotine vaping devices, developed these same fat-clogged immune cells, even though they were never exposed to vaping oils. These mice also had impaired immune systems compared to mice exposed to room air. The study set off alarm bells for Thomas Eisenberg, the co-director of the Center for Tobacco Products at Virginia Commonwealth University. For years, doctors have reported isolated cases of pneumonia-like illnesses in people who vaped. In many cases, patients also had these fat-filled immune cells. Now, these same abnormalities have been found in mice and in at least some of the people who have fallen ill recently. The group's members say they have been in regular contact with officials at the CDC and the National Institute of Health on how they can best help with the multi-state investigation. CDC and FDA investigators have pointed to THC vaping oils or vitamin E as a possible cause of these illnesses, but they have not ruled out anything yet, including conventional nicotine liquids like Juuls.
So we've been able to break some of our studies down to study just the nicotine or the solvent, the propylene glycol, vegetable glycerin, and we've been finding changes due to both of these components. So we can help identify things in e-liquids which are having these effects. And then potentially we could extend these studies and study cannabinoids or the vitamin E oils.
CDC pathologists are examining hundreds of lung cell samples gathered from patients during the outbreak. Meanwhile, forensic chemists at the FDA are testing more than 120 products to determine whether there is a common ingredient that may explain the illness. And one teen is speaking out against vaping after she was hospitalized with severe lung illness. Seema Herman from Los Angeles woke up from a medically induced coma and is now an anti-vaping advocate. She says she never expected that what she thought was a harmless habit would end up nearly killing her. The 18-year-old went viral after this photo of her from her hospital bed with a tube pumping oxygen to her failing lungs.
Realized I had a tube in my throat. I realized I had all these IVs and where I was. And I wrote that sign, I want to start a no vaping campaign. And I knew what it was before anyone else did. I woke up and I immediately realized I can't breathe. Why can't people breathe most of the time? They smoke. I was vaping. While I was doing it, I had no idea that that's where it would lead me. But once I was in that position, I knew pretty much immediately that that's what it was. And I knew that all my friends were doing it at the time, so I wrote that sign and put it on my Snapchat story just to warn them.
Seema spent 2 years suffering from nausea and migraines, but was told it was likely she was just suffering from mental illness. Her mother dismissed it for anorexia.
I mean, every hospital, every doctor's office I went to, I told my doctors that I was doing it. and they all brushed it off as if it was nothing, that what teenager doesn't do it.
And they still could not kill whatever it was that was poisoning her insides. They didn't know. Not until we were released did they say, well, we ruled everything out, and it looks like it must be completely from this vape.
Herman says she got into vaping through friends. She says she liked the flavors and thought it was a safer alternative to smoking, but having gone through her ordeal, she now realizes the severity.
They're advertised as an alternative, like a healthier alternative to smoking, but I feel like if someone is trying to go off cigarettes, they don't need a mango flavored vape. They just need the nicotine at that point, because that's what's addicting, and then they slowly go off of it. I slowly raised my nicotine levels because I got used to it.
Her mother, Stacy, says she was upset about the whole situation because she never saw the warning signs that anything was wrong.
I could recognize pot. I could recognize cigarettes. I couldn't recognize this. So even if it was sitting on her bed when I walked in, I wouldn't have known what it was, and I wouldn't have known it was dangerous. So I would never know for a minute that she's up to no good. When her room smells like scented candles, it smells like she's playing with the body spray from Bed Bath & Beyond.
In the United States, vaping companies are under intense scrutiny after several deaths and possibly hundreds of illnesses tied to e-cigarette use. In response over the growing health concerns, the state of Michigan and New York have banned flavored e-cigarettes, and now SEMA agrees flavored vapes and e-cigarette products should be banned.
There's over 450 cases, and none of us know what's going to happen to us within a few years because there is no research and there's no information about the long-term effects of it because it's so new. If I didn't go to the hospital that Thursday, I would have died in my bed that night 100%. And it's just not worth it. Like, at any point your lungs can start failing on you and you will have no idea it's happening until the point where you can't take your last breath.
Coming up next, German prosecutors launch an investigation into aerospace giant Airbus after an internal probe reveals company employees were in possession of classified documents. And police in Georgia make several arrests in a child sex trafficking ring. All the details up next.
Every day, law enforcement, firefighters, tow operators, and other emergency personnel risk their lives responding to calls for help. The move over or slow down law requires that you clear the lane closest to responding vehicles or reduce your speed to 20 miles per hour below the posted limit. Following this important law helps prevent crashes and saves lives. The next time you see flashing lights ahead, travel smart and move over or slow down. A road safety message from Houston TransStar.
The 2019 model year-end event now at Ron Carter Cadillac has been worth the wait. Enjoy our lowest payments of the year. Sign and drive new 2019 XT4 for just $359 a month, or new XT5 for just $379 a month, both for 39 months lease with just $1 down, or get 0.9% APR for 72 months on any 2019 Cadillac. Your only Houston area Cadillac to your door dealer. RonCarterCadillac.com.
When it comes to protecting yourself and your partners, all the information out there can be overwhelming. Visit our website. We are a free and confidential service, striving to help you stay informed and stay notified. We are committed to a healthy Houston.
German authorities have launched an investigation against Airbus after the company notified officials about potential employees being in possession of classified documents such as military documents. It's the latest series of scandals to hit the company. Munich prosecutors are investigating 17 people accused of revealing or incitement to reveal trade and company secrets. Airbus, in a statement, said that it had reported itself to authorities after an internal investigation over suspicious cases. The company says it fully supports authorities with their investigation. Police in Georgia have arrested 11 people, including an American and Australian citizen, after an international operation against a child trafficking ring. Girls as young as 8 were forced to produce pornographic material. Georgian officials said the joint operation with Europol, U.S. and Australian law enforcement agencies was the biggest of its kind to date. Among those arrested were the parents of some of the up to 10 minors involved. Police say they were paid between just under $250 to nearly $1,500 for pictures of the girls.
The disruption of this syndicate will have a significant effect on the production and distribution of child exploitation material, both in Georgia and internationally. This investigation is an excellent example of international police cooperation to protect children in our communities.
If found guilty on charges of child trafficking and producing and selling child pornography, the suspects could face life in jail. Georgia's Interior Ministry said the girls, who are between 8 to 14 years old, are receiving counseling. A man suspected of having plotted to blow up a flight from Sydney to Abu Dhabi in 2017 has been released from prison. Lebanese-Australian America I Sep is one of 4 brothers who were arrested after police say they planned to bring a bomb on board Etihad Airways. A military court acquitted him after spending more than 2 years in jail. The court sentenced 3 other brothers to hard labor for life. The release of Amir comes on the same day that an Australian court found his brother, Mahmoud Kayed, guilty of planning to blow up the plane in 2017. In May, a 3rd brother, Khalid, was found guilty in Australia of planning to hide the bomb disguised as a meat mincer in the luggage of Amir, who was unaware of the plot. The 2 were arrested after a series of raids in Sydney. Lebanon's police said in 2017 that one of the 4 brothers, Tariq, was an Islamic State commander in Syria. The others, Khalid, Mahmoud, and Amir, were all living in Australia but occasionally visit Lebanon. After the break, millions across the world joined strikes to demand action on climate change. And in Mexico City, millions take part in large-scale earthquake drills. Much more coming up next.
Namaste everybody, I am Astro Guru from NTV Houston. There is a good news. Now you can make the live call in our studio every Friday evening, where we will talk about astrology, numerology, horoscope reading, Vastu Shastra, gemstones, personal problem, marriage problem, horoscope match, or any health issues, business problem. Feel free to ask one question and be ready with your date of birth, birth time and birthplace, and you can talk to me in Hindi, English and Punjabi. Don't forget to watch Astro Guru only on NTV Houston.
Come see me, Salman, at Car Time Auto Repair at 10713 West Belford, Houston, Texas, 77099. Quality work that rivals any dealership. At Car Time, we don't replace parts, we fix cars. We pride ourselves on getting the job done right the first time. Car Time Auto Repair, located at 10713 West Belford. Call us today, 832-743-8180.
Happening today, millions take part in global strikes demanding action on climate change in cities around the world. Many groups are involved in organizing the strikes, including school children, trade unions, environmental groups, and employees. Some 800 events are planned to take place in the U.S. today. In New York, 1.1 million public schools have allowed students to skip classes to attend the protest. Australia saw some of the first protests kick off. Some 300,000 students and workers filled the streets of Melbourne, Sydney, and other cities in the biggest protests the country has seen in years, with thousands more in Indonesia, Germany, and elsewhere in the world. The demonstrations are timed to nearly coincide with Monday's UN Climate Summit in New York, where the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has said he wants to see governments and businesses pledge to abandon fossil fuels. Fridays for Future began a weekly demonstration by Swedish teenager Greta Thunberg in 2018, but has since spread to more than 150 countries. Millions of people in Mexico City took part in massive earthquake drills. Residents evacuated homes and buildings for drills on Thursday. The timing of the drill brought back traumatic memories for many. Thursday marked the anniversary of the 2017 and 1985 quakes that killed thousands. Authorities activated quake alarms in Mexico City, and office workers began carrying out practice runs for emergency evacuations. Even before the disaster 2 years ago, another anniversary on the same date had been engraved in the minds of older residents of the capital who remembered the massive earthquake that killed thousands of people in 1985. The 2017 7.1 magnitude quake hit central Mexico hours after a memorial evacuation drill. It killed 370 people, most of them in the capital. Tens of thousands of buildings were damaged and dozens died as schools and offices collapsed. The tremor shook the country just 12 days after a separate, more powerful earthquake struck off the southwest coast of the country, killing about 100 people. Alien enthusiasts began descending on Nevada near the secret U.S. military base Area 51, which has long been rumored to house government secrets about alien life. Residents of a remote desert town of 50 people, a short distance away from the military base, are worried their community might be overwhelmed by huge crowds turning out in response to a recent viral social media invitation to storm Area 51. Dozens of visitors began arriving outside an extraterrestrial-themed motel and restaurant called the Little Alien, parking themselves in cars, tents, and camps. One couple, Nicholas Bowen and Kayla McVeigh, traveled there from Los Angeles suburb of Fullerton with enough food to last for a whole week of car camping.
I've always been into aliens when I was born. My uncle told me that my mom got abducted and turned me into a half-breed alien, and I was told that story my whole life, so I've always been into aliens. And
Area 51 was shrouded in secrecy for decades, stoking conspiracy theories that it's home to remnants of flying saucer in the bodies of its alien crew from the crash of an UFO in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. The U.S. government did not confirm the base existed until 2013 when it released CIA archives saying the site was used to test top-secret spy planes. The documents, however, did not end suspicion about space aliens there. The owner of the only business in town, Rachel, says they are expecting many people to turn out.
I've been told anywhere from 5 to 50,000 could be here. I don't know if that's really going to happen or not.
In June, California college student Maddie Roberts posted a Facebook invitation to the public at large to run into Area 51 on foot to see them aliens. When more than 1 million people expressed interest, the U.S. Air Force warned curiosity seekers not to breach the gates at the military base, which it said is still used to test combat aircraft and train personnel. We're going to be right back with your weather update.
मनपसंद सुपरमार्केट जहां की फ्रेश वेजिटेबल्स, स्पाइसेस, फ्रोजन फूड आइटम्स आपको सबसे अच्छे प्राइस में मिलेंगी और हलाल ज़बीहा मीट भी मिलेगा। दाम मनपसंद, नाम मनपसंद, तो फिर क्यों ना जाए मनपसंद। Located at Wilcrest Drive, Houston, North Highway and William Cannon Drive, Austin, Texas। तो नाम याद रखिएगा, मनपसंद सुपरमार्केट।
Turning now to weather, things are much more quiet, but we're still feeling the effects of Imelda. Very humid out there. We can't rule out rain chances. We should see isolated showers and thunderstorms, but not at the scale and intensity of what we saw the last few days. We do still have some flood issues in some areas, still seeing a little bit of high water in some of the more affected areas, but the water is going down. Heading into the weekend, it's going to be much more typical, very hot, with highs in the low 90s, and make sure to check the radar before you head out. We could see some thunderstorms pop up Saturday and Sunday. Here's your forecast. Thank you for joining us. I'm Marcia De La Fe. Make sure to download our NTV Houston app for more.